In this lesson, we're going to cover how to create named parameters and also link parameters to an Excel spreadsheet. The file that I have open is called parameters.ipt and it can be found in your Chapter 7 exercise folder. What I'm going to start off by doing from the 2D sketch panel, down at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and click on parameters. And right now you see the parameters dialog box is empty. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a named parameter. In the previous lesson we learned that every dimension that we place is given a value starting off with D0, D2, and those labels will just keep on sequentially going. But in this case, D0, D1, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to most people. So what I'm going to do is add a user parameter. So in this case I'm just going to call it length. I can go back and place in a unit if I want. Now specifically with units, of course, usually what we're going to do is default to the value of the file that we're currently in. But you can also have a parameter set, for example, the number of holes that you may be doing inside of a pattern. In that case, if you're going to do that, what we want to make sure you do is select unitless, because we don't want to have 5 millimeters of holes, we want to have 5 holes. So in this case, you would select unitless. But for what we're going to do here, millimeters is going to be fine. Now for the equation, I'm just going to type in 60 because that's what I want. And let's go ahead and I'm going to add in a couple more. We'll just do width. But what I'm going to do for the equation, in this case I want to set up a relationship, so it's going to be half the length. So instead of typing in length, and if I do type it in, I need to make sure that it matches the capitalization correctly. So in this case, capital L and lowercase for everything else. But in this case, I'm going to select the right arrow and click from the list parameters, and now from here select on length and then just type in divided by 2. So now I have that relationship set up, and I'm also going to do a third one just called depth, and I'm going to type in a value of 20, and that's all that I want to have for this specific lesson here. So go ahead and click on done. Just back off a little bit. Now what I need to do is I'm just going to place in my dimensions. So I'm going to place in one across the bottom. Again, just like we did inside the parameters list, I'm going to click on the right facing arrow, list parameters. In this case, I want it tied to length. I'll do the same thing for the top here. Just to show that we can, I'll just type in width. In this case, you see that it's red, meaning that Inventor cannot evaluate that. So of course, in this case, I typed it in correctly. So let's tie in one more dimension here, and I want this one to be width. You'll notice when I go to the down arrow there, the right facing arrow, the previous parameters that I have used are showing up in the list here. So I'm just going to select width, slide over and say divide it by 2. In this case I'm fully constrained exactly what I want to do. Return. I want to extrude this out. Now, any dialog box that Inventor is looking for a value, you can go back and use a parameter. So in this case, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I want it, in this case, tied to the depth, and go ahead and click OK. So now any change that I do to those parameters will update the model. Another way to get to the parameters tool is go under the tools pull down and click on parameters. Now from this parameters list, you see all the dimensions that I did place in here. They're still labeled with D0, D1, D2, but you'll notice that the equation is tied to the user parameter name that we've given it. On the right hand side, we can also go back and type in a comment field if you want, so the person coming again after you would know kind of what you were thinking. But in this case, let's just go back and make some changes. I want to change the length out to 75, and let's change the depth to 10, and click done, and then update, and you'll notice that the model has changed. For the next portion of this exercise, I want to tie into an existing Excel spreadsheet. So first of all, what I'm going to do is close out of this file, not save the changes, and I'm going to reopen up the same parameters.ipt file. I'm going to get into the sketch, use the look at tool to make sure I'm going to look plan to that sketch. Now let's take a look at the Excel spreadsheet. Let me bring it up here. Now there's two different ways of doing an Excel spreadsheet. So the first example I have here is called parameters rows.xls. This too can be found in your Chapter 7 exercise folder. You'll see going across the rows here where I have the parameter name and its value. So those are really the two that are required. In this case, I also added a third, being the unit, and then I placed in a fourth for the comment. But again, just the first two are required. So this shows the option for doing it in rows. Let me close that. And you'll see the parameters columns.xls, where I have these in columns, again, length, width, and depth, with the value being the second row here. Again, these are going to be the two fields that are required, but I've also placed in the third for the unit and a comment. But again, those are not required. So what I'm going to do is close that. And what I'm going to do is exactly what we did before. I'm going to click on parameters. But in this case, I'm not going to type in user parameters. I'm going to go down at the bottom and click on link. And let's go back and link into our parameters columns.xls. And you'll notice at this point now I can go back and designate a starting cell. So if you had some other information in that Excel spreadsheet above, you may not necessarily be starting at A1, but in this case I do, since I don't have like a header row. And I'm going to link this. Now, one last point before I click open here is that the information in this Excel spreadsheet needs to be on the first sheet. So if you have information on the second or third sheet, Inventor will not look there. It's only going to look on the first sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and click on open. And you'll notice all that information is being populated right into our parameters dialog box. There's really nothing else that I need to do here. I'm just going to go ahead and click on done. And now let's go back and place in our dimensions the exact same way that we did before. So list parameters, we'll do length, and being that the values are the same, I'm just going to go ahead and select them from the list. And again, we'll have that be width divided by 2. And let's go ahead and I'm going to extrude that out. And let's again change that to the field of depth. Go ahead and click OK. And everything updates accordingly. One thing that's different now in the browser, you'll notice that we have an entry called third party, and it's showing me the Excel spreadsheet that it's being linked to. If I right click on here, I can go back and delete that if I wanted to. I could edit it or change the source if I wanted to switch that out to a different Excel spreadsheet. Understand that this same Excel spreadsheet could be utilized by multiple parts and assemblies to go back and drive them all instantaneously. So in this case, let's go ahead and edit that spreadsheet. And let's just make a change here for the length. And let's change it to 75. And let's change the depth to 30. Go ahead and save that. I'm going to close out of Excel. Click on Update. And the model is updated according to the Excel spreadsheet.